I sat down in a chair next to his bed, my nails sinking into the arms. Rage filled me. I would make Brandon pay for this. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to wrap my hands around his neck and squeeze until he was as weak and frail as father was now. Breath, Nick, Dean told me, looking worried. We'll find him and he'll be punished for this, okay? I stared at him, bewildered. How did he do that? Yeah, well, right now I think I'd rather hurt him, making him suffer like he's made father suffer than punish him. I figured, Dean said with a half smile. But that's just the anger talking right now. Douche, coward, and all-around scum of the world, the worm is still your brother, Nick, and you wouldn't feel good about yourself if you did that. Oh, I think I would. Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think, I replied. No, he's right, father's voice said in a croaky, rough sound. Father, I cried out, scooting to the edge of the seat. I took his hand in mine. How are you feeling? You need anything, a circumflex water, pain meds? He shook his head. Listen to the boy, he told me instead. For a fool and clown, he knows what he's talking about. Dean laughed, his half-smile growing an inch. I simply stared at him, not sure what to say. What had Dean been saying to father before Brandon's attack? Father, Brandon didn't just attack you. He made Yoa. I know, father said. His frown seemed to pull his whole face downward. None of this would have ever happened if your mother survived. She always knew what to say and what to do in any situation. Your mother understood people so much better than I ever could. She would have never failed him or you like I have. Don't say that, father. You didn't. Don't do that shit, girl, father snapped. I failed you by allowing you to believe you needed to be my lost son. I failed you when I got between you and the clown here, and I failed you by allowing Brandon to play alpha. I swallowed, looking down at my lap. He was right, but it felt wrong to say it now that he'd lost so much. So how bad am I? Well, you're alive, so not as bad as it could be, Dean said, and then explained what the doctor had told us. As he went on, father's expression hardened and twisted into a mix of anguish, shame, and anger. I expected him to shout, throw something, and probably take back everything even somewhat nice that he'd ever said about Brandon. Instead, he sighed and seemed to deflate. Well, shit, he said with another sigh. This is it. After everything, this is how I lose it all. Father, you don't have to lose it all, I said, gripping the arms of my chair tight. I had to give father some hope, or I was afraid of what might happen to him. You can work with Antoine, Dean said, like we were talking about before. Father scoffed and winced. I'm his competition. He'd never work with me, not to mention I'm a weak old man. He didn't seem opposed to the idea, I told him, and he's going to need help. The man is an alpha, but he wasn't an alpha in his old pack. He's alone besides his mate, and he desperately wants to protect her and his unborn child. He'll need someone to teach him the ropes, yet not be a threat to his position. You can model him into a good alpha. It's your chance for a do-over. He grunted, but father said nothing more. He seemed to be considering it, and I considered that a victory for now. How about we let you get some rest, digest everything, and we'll talk about this later, Dean suggested. Father nodded. Yes, we'll talk tomorrow, 28-29. Thank Dean, I said as we left the infirmary. He grinned. You really need to stop thanking me for doing normal, decent stuff, beautiful. I rolled my eyes and hugged him as a red-faced Marquis marched up to us. Where have you been? Do you realize what's going on? He demanded. I stiffened, narrowing my eyes at him. Yes, my father was attacked. I was with him now. I'm not talking about that, he said. That pretender. He's been taking over, acting like he's alpha. Do you know he's been organizing the enforcers to search and track Brandon? Really, I said, surprised and pleased. This was good. Yes, and what are you going to do about it? Nothing, I replied. I'm not the alpha. I told it to father from the beginning. I wasn't going to be the alpha. Sounds to me like Antoine is doing us all a favor, taking over while father is recovering. I gave Dean a little tug to continue walking when Marquis grabbed my arm. We're not finished. How dare you turn your back? It was only Dean, grabbing me and pulling me back, that saved Marquis's face from my fist. You, he said, pointing at Marquis, can go. Do what Antoine tells you to. Joseph is already considering giving him the pack and being his beta like he did Brandon. Come on, Nick, let's get you to your room. I gave Marquis one final glare before letting Dean lead me away from him and to my room. Once there, I sat on my bed and ran a hand over my head, the length of my hair still strange to me. How did this all get so messed up? Well, Dean said, sitting next to me. If you ignore that your brother tried to kill your dad, I say it's not all that bad. I mean, yeah, your dad might as well be human, but he didn't seem to take it all bad, and I don't think he hates me as much either. I laughed and shook my head, leaning against him. When you say it like that, it still sucks. Then I realized Dean had been cut with the same knife as father. My heart jolted, and I looked up at him. What about you? Are your cuts going to heal? Are you going to suffer the same effects as father? No, mine was shallow, and they were able to flush it clean, he replied. Sorry I didn't ask sooner, I said, feeling guilty. It's okay. You were worried about your dad. I hugged him. Not sure I deserve you, Dean. Dean laughed and gave me a soft squeeze. You need sleep, Nick. You're getting delusional now. He started to get up, but I stopped him. I'm not delusional, and I'd like it if you stayed, I told him, not wanting to be alone, but also ready to take another step in your relationship. Are you sure, Nick? It's been a long day. I nodded, but if you don't want to, I understand too, I said, letting him go. Dean sat down next to me. No, it's not that. You've been through a lot, and I don't want you to regret anything. I'm not going to. I want you to stay. Dean sat back down next to me and put his arm around my shoulders. All right, I'll stay, he said, and as I looked up, our lips met. Leaning into him, I wrapped my arms around his neck and gave myself into the kiss into him. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but whatever it was, being with Dean was nothing like it. Afterward, we laid in bed, him holding me, not speaking, but just being. It was the most relaxed and safest I can remember feeling. We didn't get up until nearly noon the next day, and after a breakfast/lunch, we went to meet with Antoine in Father's room. Wesley and the others waited outside in the doorway listening. Dad scowled at us all, but I had a feeling it was more for show now. So I suppose I could consider allowing you be the alpha of my pack, he said with a sniff. Dean shook his hand, covering his face with his hand, and I rolled my eyes, but Antoine crossed his massive arms over his chest and smirked down at my father. Then I suppose I could consider allowing you to be my beta and helping me and my family settle in with the pack, he replied. Dad scoffed, but the scowl wasn't so stern. I resisted a grin as I watched him. Could he actually like Antoine? God, I hope so. Any news about Douche? I asked, refusing to call Brandon anything else but that. Not yet, Antoine said. It seems he's truly gifted in running. Stayed ahead of the enforcers all the way out of his territory. I've alerted all the other alphas, explained the crimes he's committed, and asked them to return him if he's found in their territory. How likely is it they'll cooperate? Wesley asked. I made sure they knew well the series of events that lead him to this point. No one in their right mind would harbor him, Antoine replied. You might want to make it official. No doubt you'll be challenged soon enough, I told him. When the time is right, he replied. Well, Dean and I are going to be staying here for a few days. We'll do what we can to help you get a good start. Thank you, he replied and gave me a tight-lipped smile. The next few days were busy. When I wasn't visiting Father or helping Anton get to know the pack and vice versa, I went out with Dean, showing him some of my favorite places around town. Father spent all that time in infirmary. True to the doctor's word, he was healing humanly slow. When it came time for us to leave, he joined us but had to be in a wheelchair. Wesley and Sade had decided to stay with him. I gave them both my blessing. I knew this was Sade's home, and I didn't need her staying by my side to know she was my friend. Good luck, I said, shaking Antoine's hand. And thanks for one hell of a fight. Take care of the pack, or I'll come back to kick your ass. He laughed. I have seen you fight. You won't find me so easily next time. I looked to Father. I forgive you for being a sexist asshole. Try to learn a few things from Antoine here. He grunted with a scowl. I'm too old of a dog to go changing my ways now. Well, certainly not with that attitude. If you're breathing, you can change. Don't be a jackass. This time he only grunted in reply. And you can still call me daughter after today. I gave him a kiss on the cheek and John, Dean, and I got into Alpha Brent's jet. You okay? Dean asked for what felt like the 100th time. Of course, I replied, taking his hand in mine. More than okay, and we've got a lot of work to do. I'm eager to get started and get the pack project underway. Dean grinned. No regrets. None. 29.